Hi there. This is Joel Greenberg, and yes, this is Life in Stages, the podcast, season four. Just before I bring in this week's guest, I want to thank all of you who are listening and have been listening for the past four seasons, listening to a number of artists who have been really open and direct about how they found their way to this profession and why they stayed. Um, it fascinates me because this is an opportunity that I don't have in rehearsal. There just isn't the time for this, and rarely am I in the presence of an actor who has the freedom or the time to really respond to questions that I might have. But so I thank you. I thank you for listening, and I am particularly uh, grateful to Tim Ziegler of ZieglerWealth.com, Ziegler Wealth.com, uh, for being this season's sponsor, as he was for season three. And Tim approached me during season two to tell me that he enjoyed the podcast, that as a financial manager, a number of his clients are artists, many of whom had been and were about to be guests on the podcast. And he really thought this was a good fit. And I didn't disagree. So here we are. And I thank you, Tim. And now I bring in Bruce Dow as this week's guest. Hiya, Bruce.
Hey Joel, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good, good.
Yeah, I think.
All right. Well, we'll weigh in on that within the next hour or so and
Sounds great.
see what that is. I'd like you to start by telling us, and I include myself in learning about where you found where this work found you, where this world found you. Uh, was it family? Was it community? How do you get you go. You know what I'm asking you.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I was really blessed with two incredibly wacky parents, but they held in high esteem all of the arts.
Hmm.
And it's a funny thing. I have a sort of in my mind's eye, I have a memory of a year in which we went to the Vancouver Playhouse, the Vancouver Opera, the Pacific Ballet, I think,
Hmm.
Theater Under the Stars in the park, Stanley Park. And for me, it was magic, and for me, it was all the same thing. I ran into stuff later in my career where I'd go, well, I can sing that, I can act that, I can do that. And then I found the industry was fragmented up, and that, oh, if you're an actor, you don't do opera, and if you do this, you don't, um, which has loosened up a lot as things become much more integrative. But yeah, I remember I think I was about 7 years old, and we just had, very blessed and privileged to have seasons tickets to go see stuff,
Hmm.
and parents who would, uh, we'd listen to the music or read the play or read the story of the
Hmm.
play the week before, and and we got dressed up to go. It was the
Yeah.
period where I had a little jacket and tie that I wore.
Uh,
And there were very strict rules. You go in and you sit there, and if you're confused, you can whisper a question to mommy or daddy,
hmm.
or if you're bored, you can fall asleep.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll end up in the car. Like and cranky old white guy. There was an etiquette to going to the theater.
Yeah.
Um, it's why I don't like going to the theater now, because it should be obvious we turn our cell phones off. It should
Hmm.
be obvious that we're not going to talk through the whole thing. This is an experience we're trying to have. So, wow, you're getting it all at once. You hit a nerve. It's good. Um, so no, it was. I mean, there was the exposure to it, but then there was the flip side, and now that I'm primarily in private practice as a registered psychotherapist, registered counseling therapist, and
Hmm.
certified psychospiritual therapist, that's a
Yes.
mouthful. Um, uh, I look back on it, and I am aware that, as wonderful as my parents are, my dad was a raging narcissist. It wasn't a safe person to be around.
Hmm.
Um, And so I lived in a very intense fantasy world. And when I saw there was a way that a fantasy world could be something you did,
Hmm.
I was certainly drawn to it and took it quite seriously from an early age,
Hmm.
you know.
And was that fostered in school as well?
I was lucky in school. I had, uh, oh, in grade three, we did a Halloween day presentation for our class, and we just made a scary Halloween room. And
Hmm.
I had this idea for flying a witch across the ceiling, and I could see it on the fishing line and how it would work and how I'd paint her and what I'd do. The teacher didn't get it, but the teacher said, "Okay, show me. Go ahead, put it together and bring it in."
Hmm.
Um, in high school, I had a creative writing teacher who was just, this is the project, you're doing that. You did the project. Do you want to do something more? Do you want to try that? I had a high school drama teacher. I did Crap's Last Tape for the BC High School Dramas Festival, and we did an excerpt from Oedipus Rex. Um, and we had these great books. I hope I still have them somewhere. I can't remember what they were, but they were books of classic scenes,
Uh-huh.
and they were everything from Shakespeare to then contemporary American plays,
Hmm.
and just these great excerpts of scenes that were so wonderful to work on in doing serious scene study in grade 10 in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Vancouver.
I grew up born in Seattle, raised in Vancouver.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, okay. So, are you a dual citizen?
I am sort of by default.
Uh-huh.
When I moved up, and when I became a Canadian citizen, I was 12.
Right.
So I was
Okay.
underage. At that age, in that period, you couldn't hold a dual citizenship,
Okay.
but I wasn't legally of age to renounce my US citizenship.
Okay.
The law changed in my early 20s,
Uh-huh.
and when I came out to do Les Mis in Toronto and realized, oh, maybe I could do a Broadway show, I looked
Hmm.
into it. I still had my citizenship, and I
Hmm.
applied for a passport and a social insurance
Okay.
number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so back to high school.
Back to high
So,
school.
um, so there was an outlet for you, or there was an opportunity for you to practice and to become involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were really good drama classes, and
Hmm.
uh and encouragement, and we did Prince of Wales High School, Don Briard. We did 4 plays a year, one of which was the big
Wow.
school musical, which would
Hmm.
include more people, but it was there was kind of a drama club.
Hmm.
Um, and he trusted us and gave us access to, one of my best friends from that day came to be a big stage manager in Toronto, and then moved on to run all of entertainment on Princess Cruises. So,
Hmm.
it just the encouragement, whenever he saw encouragement,
Hmm.
he really he really supported it. Where
Yeah.
he saw interest, he encouraged. You
Yeah.
know.
Isn't that, and it really is fundamental that if that encouragement and support uh, takes like it takes the individual, it takes particularly a young person, a student, a very long way. Uh, and it seems, I mean, it's not banal, but it seems so obvious. And the the opposite of that, if somebody early in their development, whether it's as a human or
Mm.
early in your development as a performer, for instance, the the tenuous nature of whether or not if you're fortunate to be in a healthy and supportive environment, as opposed to a place where you are, being tested in a very negative way. And
Yes. Uh, but just to add to that, it
yeah.
also had guidelines and expectations which were great. I
Hmm.
think there's um, I sorry, I'm trying to formulate this thought here,
Yeah.
because that brought up so much stuff. Yeah, it was a place where I felt I had some, I might have something to give, and I was
Hmm.
encouraged to explore it. That
Yeah.
was so uplifting. But
Hmm.
there was also guidelines. It wasn't, it has to be in this structure. Make sure it
Hmm.
has this. There's a, as much as there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a scene,
Hmm.
there was a beginning, middle, end to the process. There was,
Hmm.
um, I mean, it was the late 70s, so there was a lot of sort of fly, be free, discover, but it
Yes.
wasn't just that. It
Hmm.
was somebody with knowledge, not instructing, but inviting you to explore with instruction and guidelines and
Hmm.
framework.
Yeah.
And it's I have a number of clients who are now in my psychotherapy practice as um, who teach drama,
Hmm.
and the challenges they're dealing with is are in the classroom are so very different now.
Hmm.
And so they are dealing with the fact that I've got a student who I'd really like to encourage, or a few students,
Hmm.
but I'm also just trying to manage kids who have no emotional self-regulation, who
Hmm.
are addicted to their cell phones, who
Hmm.
don't have a sense of reality and presence, who
Hmm.
have never known what a deadline is, who've never known what, you know, consequences are. And I don't
Hmm.
just mean punishment consequences. I just
Yeah.
mean if
Yeah.
if you leave the thing out on the counter, it'll go bad. That's what
Hmm.
happens.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but for me, it was where home could be scary. Drama class was a place where I actually had some skills and something
Yeah.
I could offer and something to learn,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. So, okay. So after high school, I
Hmm.
mean, because you've talked about, and I know from your own work, you've got a very wide range of, music and non-music and move. I mean, you can do it all, and you have done it all. So, what do you do with that when you finish high school? Do you train
Um,
specifically?
I went directly into the University of British Columbia Department of Theater. There
Okay.
was a first year application for the
Hmm.
BFA in acting program,
Yeah.
and it was the same team of people who 10, 15 years before had trained Brent Carver and Jeff Hislop and Richard
Okay.
Azunian.
Hmm.
There was a man leading the program, Dr. John Brockington, who he was amazing. The program itself was amazing because there were six different instructors of acting,
Hmm.
and when you went into their classroom, they would say to you, I'm going to teach you something totally different from what you learned in Mr. X's class
Hmm.
or Ms. X's class, and I'm going to do something different. Do this in this class.
Hmm.
See how it feels in here. Try this out. When you go to their class, do what they are doing, which may be totally different. If there's a
Yeah.
contradiction that's confusing you, come to us, talk to us. We'll clarify the difference. We'll
Hmm.
support you in understanding it. Um, so it was a very uh, active, intense, exciting, uh, confusing, clear way of learning,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a really wonderfully challenging program.
Yeah.
Um, and it had theater history was basically it was a Bachelor of Fine Arts with a minor in theater history.
Okay.
Um, uh, Once I finished that, I didn't want to be an actor.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I wasn't ready. I was still emotionally not mature enough to go out in the world.
Hmm.
Um, but also I found myself more interested in the whole project rather than just my piece of it.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, it might have been different. I did a summer stock. They had a summer stock group as well, which we ran ourselves as students.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but I ran into a number of actors in my last summer stock who were very oh, am I in the moment? Am I present? Am I feeling it? And that just totally turned me off. It's like, well,
Mhm.
what about the scene? What about the person you're playing with?
Mhm.
What about the story we're telling? Maybe it's not about you in this moment, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, uh, so I did a year of an unclassified year after my bachelor's of stage management, set and costume design, lighting design, and undergrad directing.
Okay.
And then I went in and did my MFA in directing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and loved that,
Yeah.
and have done some, but somehow ended up being an actor
Yeah.
for
So yeah, how does that happen? I mean, if you had decided that acting wasn't it, or that wasn't where you wanted to put yourself, how did it find you and take hold?
well, it was I mean specific instances. Once I finished the MFA in directing,
Hmm.
uh, I, I'd been to London. I'd seen Les Mis. I didn't like it, but I
Hmm.
knew theatrically it was fascinating from a staging point of view,
Hmm.
and not just the set, the way they moved the people, and
Hmm.
it was basically an open space that they
Hmm.
moved people in and out of.
Yeah.
Um, sure, there was the big barricade and the revolve, but those were inconsequential to the rest of the piece. Um, so I thought I can sing, I can act, I'll audition for it, and I'll work with the people from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I'll learn as a
Hmm.
young director how they staged it, what they did.
Hmm.
Um, I talked to other directors in Vancouver about assistant directing, and so I did an assistant directing at the Vancouver Opera.
Hmm.
Um, the opera world is very different,
Yeah.
and what an assistant director does is not what I thought an assistant director does. So it was a very interesting experience.
What
Um,
does an assistant director in opera do?
uh, I was allowed to sit there and watch,
Uh-huh.
and that was great. That was a
Hmm.
great opportunity. Um, but there's no discussion of what it wasn't an educational position. It was
Hmm.
simply you know, um, yeah, it was basically sit there and watch. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not really sure what that
Hmm.
was. There was another assistant director, and she was sleeping with the conductor, and she had much more to do than I did. So
Yeah.
that was an interesting arrangement. Um, and then I went to interview, God, who was it? With Guy Sprung at the Vancouver Playhouse,
Hmm.
and um, his attitude. I walked in, I went, "Hi, I'm just finishing my master's of fine arts in directing. I'd really love to learn. I'd love to work with you. I'd love to." And his thing was, "Well, how do they teach you to direct? Why would you do a master's? Why aren't you?" Because he had learned on the streets, but
Right.
it was more about that was not a pleasant interview.
Hmm.
Not a horrible person, but just you know, it was a I'm not a school learned guy, so.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like, well, they actually taught me quite a bit, and I learned
Hmm.
about this, that, and the other thing,
Yeah.
and it was not a match.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
I have a Guy Sprung story.
okay.
It's not a long story, but it's
Mm,
a similar thing. I was in Toronto. I had met Guy very briefly in Montreal because he was
right.
at McGill and I was at what became Concordia. And I came to Toronto. He was running Toronto Free Theatre, and I had the first work I had in Toronto was a musical, and I had done a lot of musical sort of extracurricular musical work in Montreal, but the theater school that I was at, there was no, I mean, musicals weren't even allowed. So I went to see Guy to say, I would really like to direct something. And he said, well, we don't do musicals. I said, no, I know you don't do musicals. That's exactly why I'm here. He said, well, yeah. He said, I remember seeing you in a play in Montreal. I said, uh-huh. That was really it. That was, uh, I think we were speaking, we,
Different language,
we were not really speaking to each other. So,
right?
anyway, you carry on. That was my
Well,
guy sprung.
that's fascinating because that's exactly what I ran into after Les Mis. Les Mis
Okay.
itself is a whole another podcast about we
Hmm.
didn't get anybody from the Royal Shakespeare Company. We
Hmm.
got Cameron Mackintosh's ex-boyfriend, who was a failed hairdresser, who was the
Hmm.
director in residence. Um, it was a nightmare from the directing end of things. But I did learn and process the staging.
Yeah.
Um, but sending out my resume after that, either as a director or an actor, I had this one major musical credit.
Hmm.
And then under that, I had Shakespeare and contemporary Canadian plays and contemporary American plays and all this stuff mixed in. Um, but you sent your resume out to theater companies, and the response was, "We're not doing a musical this year."
Hmm.
And I'm like, dudes, read past the first line on the That's when I learned to reorder my resume. If you're
Yeah.
applying to Stratford, put
Hmm.
Shakespeare's at the top. If you're
Yeah.
applying to Factory, put your contemporary Canadian at the top.
Hmm.
You know, don't put a date on it. We used to put our dates on when we did
That's
things on the
right.
resume. But yeah, it was that same thing of like this. I entered a really myopic world. Is that
Hmm.
the right word?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just, oh, you do musicals.
Hmm.
Therefore,
Yeah.
you can't act.
Right.
Therefore, you
Hmm.
don't know anything about directing. You
Hmm.
don't know anything about contemporary theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that was a real frustration for a
Uh,
long.
were you then, by then, were you living in Toronto or were you still in Vancouver?
No, by then I moved to Toronto for Les Mis in
I see.
1989.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
after that, ended up at Stratford in the
Hmm.
Brian McDonald, Gilbert Sullivan revivals.
Okay.
Um, which as a student of directing is another fascinating, that could be
Hmm.
a whole podcast nightmare. But that was another thing. I spent my years at Stratford auditioning for. I did a general audition for them every year, and every year they would say, "You're so wonderful in the musicals. Oh, we can't use you in Shakespeare." And I'd go in and do a Shakespeare, and they go, "Oh, you're very good at Shakespeare." And I'm like, "Yeah, give me a part," you know. And it wasn't really until my last few years there where they went, "Oh, he can do. Oh, that's cool." And then, do you remember a funny company meeting where Richard Manette had kind of been saddled with the musical company for one of his Shakespeare's,
Hmm.
and he was sitting there having a just a general company meeting, questions, whatever, and they went, "Something I do have to say is that." Did you guys know the musical people are actually better at speaking the text than you Shakespeare people? And there was sort of a big gasp and a lot of applause from the rest of us, because we understand rhythm and
Hmm.
space and whatever. And so yeah, that was a lot of my acting career was sort of breaking down
Wait,
there.
you were at Stratford for many seasons.
12 seasons over a
Yeah.
period of about 16 years. So
Yeah.
there and away and there and away. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's that like? I mean, it's an enormous operation,
Hmm.
right? And and as you say, you were auditioning every year. Uh, was did you did you did you have any control over or any input into what you were doing or how they could
I,
better?
I was never, despite the success I had there, I was never on that level. There was only a
Mhm.
handful of 5 to 7 actors who would go into the artistic director's office and either tell them what they wanted to do next
Mhm.
year or would sort of have the conversation of what kind of thing would you like to do.
Okay.
Um, uh, the rest of the company would have a discussion of what you're interested in generally,
Mhm.
and I was sort of touching into that group, but never quite. I never went to the bars after to hang out with
Uh-huh.
people, and it's not. I guess at that time it was simply social anxiety,
Mhm.
but it wasn't anything I didn't like about anybody. I liked
Mhm.
them all. Um, uh, no, that was a very small group.
Yeah.
For me, the most exciting part of working there was the craftspeople,
Hmm.
the technicians building the sets, the
Yeah.
people who made the wigs from scratch, who made your boots.
Hmm.
Like that's just the wardrobe department, the soft props department. Those people are magicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the security was great, but it's also an entirely artificial construct,
Hmm.
and it's very disconnected from the rest of the world of theater.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful isolated bubble butterfly,
Yeah. Well, I've certainly known many people who have worked there, young actors, young early career actors. Uh, I think I certainly remember hearing about people's extreme anxieties about, as the season moved on, once rehearsals were over, essentially, the terror of whether or not they would be invited back, or if
It,
so,
yeah.
doing what, and should I, not always, but often, is it worth my going back to do what I've been offered? But how can I say no? If I say no, I'll never get back there.
There was I mean there were some intense people higher up who did play games like that in
Hmm.
terms of offering roles and things like that. There is in any institution. Um, and but for the most part, I always felt management was just trying to manage this beast and figure out where they
Hmm.
could put people.
Yeah.
But yes, it was simply a factor of the thing. You get there, you're excited, you start rehearsals, you're getting close to opening, and even at getting close to opening, already discussions of what is going to happen next year
Yeah.
start circulating. And then if you have a late opener, you're still in rehearsals and you're hearing the rumors of this is happening, that's happening.
Hmm.
They're going to announce the season, who's doing what, who do I have to talk to? What it,
Hmm.
the yeah, but it comes with that. I always took serious. I did buy a house there and have a house
Hmm.
there for quite a while. Um, but I always had the understanding that it was a seasonal gig.
Right. Right.
And I was there for the seasons I was there. It was really rough when I wasn't at a season, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
Maybe sometimes it wasn't. I'd go work somewhere else,
Hmm.
you know? But the illusion that I will be one of the 5, 10 to 15 out of 150 actors who will work there every year for the rest of my life
Hmm.
is a very strange delusion
Hmm.
that hits most once that check comes in and you feel what it's like to work consecutively for 9 months
Yes.
and then work for another 9 months the next year, and you have this 3 month break off between in which you don't
Yeah.
have to work or go, you don't have to go broke,
Hmm. Hmm.
um you can that was a that's a very sort of Alice in Wonderland place to live in, and it's
Yeah.
why it's so wonderful.
Hmm.
It's also why I now see a bunch of young artists going out there and buying houses and they're on
Hmm.
their fifth season, sixth season. That's great.
Hmm.
Maybe more. Doesn't mean there's going to be more seasons,
Right. Right.
and where is your connectivity to the rest of the industry?
Yeah.
It's
So how do you, so what did you do,
yeah.
having spent so many seasons there, and they were long seasons,
Mhm.
um, how did you negotiate, a career outside of Stratford? Because you certainly had one.
I, it it's something a lot of actors don't know you can do. You
Uh-huh.
can write to people.
Hmm.
There are some actors who think they can write to everybody all the time. That's
Hmm.
also not good. But I would, either a director who had worked there who was working somewhere else, I'd say, "Hey, what are you doing? Can I
Hmm.
can I come?"
Hmm.
Directors I didn't know, I said, "I love what you're doing. It's interesting. Can we have a talk?
Hmm.
Can I?" And that's the thing. It's not about same thing with getting an agent.
Hmm.
I don't know if I want you to be my agent. I've never met you, so I'm not going to write you an email going, "Take me on your roster." I'm
Hmm.
going to write to you and go, "Hey, can we talk? Just find out what it's like and
Yeah.
tell me about the industry, tell me about the business, tell me how you work."
Hmm.
Um, so it was a lot of foot traffic,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a lot
Yeah.
of sending, call and response. Well, I didn't get a response from them. They're not it. It's kind of
Hmm.
precursor to the dating apps. You
Yes.
you send out your resume and your profile and your picture and
Yeah. Yeah.
hope they find you cute.
Yes. Now you've worked, I mean, you've worked in so many in so many kinds of spaces. So, I think I don't know if it may have been the last time that I saw you, you were in Prince Edward County in an outdoor tent, right?
Right,
Doing
right.
Shakespeare. So, you weren't, you weren't tainted by the fact that if you couldn't be on the festival stage, you couldn't be anywhere, right?
That well, and that was a two-way street that I really um it's something frustrating now when you reach out to Stratford and you say, "Hey, could I haven't, and I've worked there. It's been lovely. I have no
Hmm.
right now interest in going back. But in previous years, I have reached out and they've gone, "Oh, Bruce, we'd never ask you to audition." And I'm like, "Yes, please make me audition. I want you
Hmm.
to see how I've grown between then and now. I want to
Hmm.
do different things for you."
Hmm.
So Prince Edward County was a case of Graham Abbey was running it at the time.
Hmm.
And I wrote to him and said, "What are you doing? That sounds fun." And he went, "Oh, would you seriously consider?" I was like, "Yes, I love you. I want to work with you. I don't care. It's a check and it's doing Shakespeare outside being eaten by mosquitoes. How
Yeah.
wonderful, you know?"
Yeah.
And then Brendan Healy was amazing with Buddies that,
Hmm.
here I came, the Stratford musical guy, and he went, "Let's do an audition, let's do a workshop." He'd seen me in another work there, Alistair. Oh God. Alistair, I'm sorry. Your name just it's morning and your name fell out of my head. Well, he did the Lady Gaga show there and he brought me in
Hmm.
because it was a musical piece, sort of. But Brendan said, "Yeah, Bruce, you could do something different. Could you read this play and could we see what it's like?" And it was great. And that was a Dora Award there. But
Hmm.
yeah, I also never believed, which is, this brings me now a bit into my research as a psychotherapist
Hmm.
about how we look at acting.
Hmm.
We have the idea that it's a staircase or a ladder. I am in the ensemble. I move into small speaking roles. I move into minor roles. I move into
Hmm.
leading roles, and then I do bigger leading roles, and then I do film and television, and then I get my Oscar.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
throughout it, I am constantly working. I had a period post Stratford of about 10 years where I was doing amazing creative work
Hmm.
at Buddies with Outside the March, in Washington, D.C., living below the poverty line
Hmm.
and getting a Dora nomination or a Helen Hayes nomination or an award in, every other year.
Hmm.
So there's this illusion that I'm an actor, but then I was so depressed the 98% of the rest of the year,
Hmm.
uh, where if I'm not acting, I'm not anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have this, horrible phrases we tell kids in theater school. If you can do anything else, go do that. But if
Hmm.
you can't, and the only thing you can do is theater, then live theater.
Yeah.
Well, that ain't gonna work,
Hmm.
you know? But then if I believe I'm only alive when I'm on stage, what are you when you're not on stage?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I had a huge problem with the idea of getting a demeaning job that was not in the theater, that was,
Hmm.
but I'm a creative artist. Why would I go put, you know, cans on shelves at Loblaws? Why would I sling drinks behind a bar?
Hmm.
You know, well, dumbass, you could have paid your rent.
Hmm.
And thank God you had that best friend from high school who took you in off the street and let you sleep on his couch for 6 months, well, actually 6 years.
Hmm.
So, somewhere along the line, I had no delusions about who I was. Uh, I ran into a young actor who I'd seen at something in Shakespeare by the Sea out in Halifax. Which, if
Hmm.
you're out in Halifax, go. It's such a great experience. Um, and out of the blue, he just said, "I saw you in Into the Woods at Stratford, and that performance changed my life. And whenever I think of Into the Woods, I think of you." I don't think about me in Into the Woods.
Sure.
I'm not
Yeah.
sitting at home going, "My baker was transformative."
Yeah.
Um, uh, I know it was a great production. Peter Hinton took it in such an exciting way.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm never clung to my career. Now, changing to a different career,
Mhm.
that was I had a lot of breakdowns about if I'm not Bruce Dow, the actor, who the hell am I?
Yeah.
And that's also an unhealthy thing. That I'm Bruce Dow, period. I'm a person
Hmm.
who acts, who writes, composes, whatever,
Hmm.
and now I'm doing something else primarily that I kind of love as much, if not more,
Yeah.
you know?
So let's talk about, I mean, I want to hear more about that and how when that change, when it happened and how you made that transition. I mean, just I think emotionally and psychologically, even more than
Mm,
in school term in academic terms.
yeah. It actually had started very early. I
Hmm.
think it started at the end of the BFA when I went. I don't know if I felt I had to be very self-absorbed to be an actor, and I didn't
Hmm.
really like myself or want to be self-absorbed. I wanted to do other stuff. It really showed up doing Les Mis, which was I'd worked at the theater company in Kamloops. That was my first professional gig, but Les Mis was my first
Okay.
big money show.
Hmm.
And I was a swing, and there was a lot of time off stage. And that's when I realized 8 shows a week for a long run, while lucrative,
Hmm.
that's not, I didn't know what to do with myself during the days. That's
Yeah.
not much of a
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So I was already looking at applying to law schools and things like that
Hmm.
during Les Mis back in 1990.
Okay.
Um, I applied in my first year at Stratford. I applied to be the head of the drama department at Douglas College in New Westminster. I got the job, went
Hmm.
out, did 2 weeks of it, had a total meltdown, and went, I'm not ready to do this yet. I wasn't.
Hmm.
There was a real push of internal voices.
Okay.
This is not the life I really want to be doing, but I'm not ready to let go of it because I've lived it. It's what I've wanted
Sure.
since I was four,
Sure.
you know. So that internal struggle went throughout my whole career.
Hmm.
Um, and it was weird. We were doing Diana on Broadway, Diana the musical,
Yes.
winner of 4 Razzie Awards, and with that show, I've got to say, um, I kind of knew how bad it was.
Yeah.
As and yet the writers were so well intentioned.
Hmm.
They were, the composer was David Bryan, the keyboardist for Bon Jovi, and he
Hmm.
loved 80s rock, and he knew
Hmm.
Diana loved 80s rock, and he
Hmm.
wanted to write an 80s rock Evita about Diana. So
Yeah.
the heart in that show is so wonderful,
Hmm.
and it was so evident in rehearsals, and it was one of the best companies I'd worked with, one of the most
Hmm.
talented companies. If you
Hmm.
watch it, just watch those dancers.
Hmm.
They're singing their crap out of things
Yeah.
and doing things with their body that now my old body will not do anymore.
Sure.
So it was a wonderful experience. Um, the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
They brought us back pre-vaccine in a COVID bubble to re-rehearse it and film it. They had the
Hmm.
same, it doesn't work on film. But it was so great to be a part of that. I loved that experience. But when the pandemic hit, I also knew, the producer says, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We're not going to be back in a couple of
Right.
weeks.
Sure.
This is going to be years.
Hmm.
And at the time, I went back to live on my best friend's sofa, and I'm so grateful.
Hmm.
Um, but at the time, the guy I was then dating, who's now my husband,
Hmm.
brave little soldier that he is, um, he was doing this degree in intercultural psychotherapy and multi-faith psychospiritual therapy at the
Uh-huh.
University of Toronto.
Okay.
And I thought, I like my therapist. That sounds weird. I can sit and drink on the sofa, or maybe I can look at changing the direction of my life.
Hmm.
And the one great example for my dad is he changed careers 5 times and was great at all of them
Hmm.
because he had the guts of a, grandiose narcissist. He could walk into any room and take over.
Yeah.
But so I started the studies, and I really liked it and really loved it, and yet through the process I really like a lobster shedding its shell.
Hmm.
It's taken my 5 years of clinical practice to rip out of this. I would sit on the edge of my bed and my husband would freak out because I was pounding my chest, going, "If I'm not Bruce Dow, the actor, who am I? What
Hmm.
am I? What does the last 38 years mean?
Hmm.
Am I throwing that all of those beliefs of if I'm only alive on stage,
Yeah.
you know, things that I find unhelpful for
Hmm.
an artist's mental health.
Sure.
Um, uh, which I'm just going to throw in a plug. I just posted today on Facebook and Instagram. I put out a poll um, for a possible workshop, mental health well-being workshop
Hmm.
series for anybody in the performing arts, actors, singers, dancers, stage managers,
Hmm.
directors, anybody interested.
Yeah.
It's just a poll right now, see who's interested in what.
Yeah.
But no, it was a real sort of almost Faustian struggle of
Hmm.
you know because I know I watched actors disappear from Stratford and I went, oh, well, they're just not doing it anymore. I guess it wasn't for them. Or,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I watched a lot of great actors. Uh, I watched Patricia Collins get just sort of pushed to the sidelines
Hmm.
as the roles became fewer. And
Yeah.
I went, here's
Yeah.
here's an incredible, incomparable talent,
Hmm.
and there is no place for her,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The one of the probably one of the most painful realities of this profession is that, and I think actors, because there are more actors, more aspiring actors than in any of the other areas of theater,
Right.
uh, you're allowed to be an actor when somebody gives you a contract telling you that you are now an actor. So
Yes.
to your point about who am I if I'm not Bruce Dow, the actor, I mean, I think that it applies to all of us. And I haven't taught in the last 7 or 8 years, but I have taught a lot. And I remember what it was like, particularly when I was at the University of Waterloo. There were many students who really wanted to think of a career
Right.
as a performer. And by fourth year, that number, of course, was much lower. But even so, there would be probably in a typical year, probably 5 or 6 seniors who really wanted and who I believed had every reason to think about
Hmm.
further training or and of those numbers, maybe one a year, maybe
Yeah.
would go on and try because I mean, even before they knew what it was like, the terror of what they thought they would be facing,
Yeah.
um, they moved on to other things, and it wasn't fear that did it. It was just the reality that they're not knowing if this was something they could commit to so wholly, so completely. Um,
Well, it's also the training of artists, and I'm working with the Association of Acting Coaches and Educators, which is
mhm,
a really interesting group. Uh, there's the purpose is to train you how to act and how to be an actor and how to have somewhat of
mhm,
a career in an actor. But we'll say in passing, maybe have another job that pays your bills.
mhm,
But we don't get a real training on uh, how to be a full person
mhm,
who does this
mhm.
thing,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is not fundamentally sustainable.
Mhm,
I mean, and you see the actors at Stratford and you think, well, it's sustainable for them, so maybe I can become,
mhm,
the next Lucy Peacock who'll have 30 seasons at Stratford and that'll be my whole career,
mhm.
you know. Um, but and God love her, she's a sweetheart and she's brilliant. But that's not the reality. 95% of American
Mhm.
Actors Equity is out of work at any one time.
Mhm.
There just simply isn't the amount of work for people who put actor on their tax return.
Right.
So again, it's that question of I did this workshop for the Playwrights Guild of Canada, um, riffing on the Killers song, "Are we human or are we dancer?" I went, am I human or am I playwright?
Hmm.
And if I'm a playwright and I'm not writing a play, I am
Hmm.
not.
Right.
So how do I remain a human
Hmm.
who writes plays
Hmm.
and does other things? And I heard of a friend whose daughter is trying to work in the theater, doing a lot of different creative things, none of which are making any money to pay the rent.
Hmm.
That's also not a viable thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and 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 you don't want to be the old duffer going, well, you better get a real job. Because that my
Hmm.
dad used to come to Stratford, and after the shows, it was his joke, but he'd go, "You were very good, son, but the post office might be hiring." And that's, you know, uh, that
Yeah.
was a different thing. You don't want to be that, but there is an element of indie theater will not pay your bills.
Yeah. No, it, it will when you're very young and when you don't have, when I think when there is a sense of, romanticism, and I don't mean that,
No, it is.
I'm
It
not
is
being
the
cynical, but when you have that,
idealistic hope of youth of
yeah,
this is
yeah,
what I'm going to be and what I'm going to do.
yeah, and it for very few people, I it doesn't last, and it may last for some. I really have, I've always had. I guess I think the word is envy, for actors, for artists who I, f- I felt, were fine with whatever they were able to, how, whatever they were able to create for themselves, that
Right,
they didn't really care. Now, whether that, I have no idea how true that was, because
right,
that was my sense, because that wasn't me.
right.
You know, and I looked at it was like actors who could come in when I was directing, I really did admire actors who could come into an audition and they were certainly prepared, but they didn't seem, they didn't seem to care whether or not they got the part. And I don't mean that they were less committed or less interesting. There was something I found quite compelling about an actor who didn't seem like it wasn't important enough. Yeah, I want the job, but I'm not. My life will continue if I don't get it.
Yeah.
And again, whether I was reading that person correctly, I'll never know. But if
Right.
I wasn't, then their performance was really good.
Yeah.
And as opposed to the actors, and that was most of the actors who I met, and they tended to be early career actors who came in, and you had the feeling, I had the distinct feeling they would be so happy if they could just be out of that room. Like they were
Oh,
there.
the anxiety,
Yeah,
the nerves are so complex,
yeah.
and the it's either the exactly that is the get because I've been on the other side of the table. It's that
Mhm.
just let this be over. I'm so uncomfortable.
Yes, yes,
Or the
yeah,
inverse, which is just love me, love me, love me, love me, love
yes.
me, and that's the energy I brought in so
Hmm.
often, which was just
Hmm.
not really helpful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
um, it's ugh.
Yeah, let's shift this a little bit because
Okay,
to go back to and to
yeah,
focus on Bruce Dow, the actor, the
yeah,
performer. So
sure.
you've worked on Broadway several times. Yeah?
Yep, five featured roles in musicals on Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it different? And if so, how is it different to be in that world than it is to be almost anywhere else, or say at Stratford, which is probably as large a focus, as strong a spotlight as Broadway.
Um, this is going to upset some people at Stratford. It does not have as large a spotlight as Broadway.
Right,
I
right.
think perhaps in Canada it might, but I
Hmm.
question that. I think
Yeah.
Stratford believes it has as strong a spotlight.
Hmm.
I went to New York and said I've done, you know, 12 seasons in leading roles at the Stratford Shakespeare Festival, and they went,
Hmm.
"Where? Oh, the one in Connecticut? I thought that closed."
Right. Hmm.
So no,
Yeah.
but they are similar in budget, scale, size, attendance.
Mm.
I think they should be held more equally in balance.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but the illusion that we have any kind of Canadian star system is still delusional,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but with so the differences are Stratford is the most glorious bubble to live in.
Hmm.
You are so well taken care of. Dressing rooms are clean and spacious.
Hmm.
Getting to and from the theater, you can ride your bike, you can walk by
Hmm.
the lake, you know, there are quaint stores and shops. There's nature nearby that whole park system, and you know, you are literally in a beautiful wonderland,
Hmm.
surrounded by skilled, intelligent, caring people
Hmm.
who are really, exceptional at what they do, and they respect that you are there to do exceptional work,
Hmm.
which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, Broadway is slightly more Dickensian.
Hmm.
There are intensely there is the same level of craftsmanship. The wigs aren't as good as they are at Stratford on Broadway, but there are
Hmm.
some depends. It was funny. Depending different shows, they go, well, who's doing the wigs? Oh, them, rat. Oh well, but there are a couple of great wig masters in New York, of course. Uh, but the technology, the skill set is equal for
Hmm.
the construction of things.
Hmm.
The crews in New York are like the crews at Stratford. They're just a bunch of great guys. They're
Hmm.
rougher. They're New Yorkers.
Right.
They're used to wrestling on the subway. The
Hmm.
language is rougher. Physically, they're rougher. They're just rougher around the edges.
Hmm.
Um, uh, the expectations of the actor are the same. The difference is that you're performing in a rental house.
Hmm.
So the three big conglomerates that own the Broadway theaters, they'll repair the front half of the building where the audience walks in.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
do. When we did Jane Eyre at the Brooks Atkinson, the previous show had flopped. They hadn't had money to get the set out, so they stuffed it in the basement. Our
Hmm.
set was too big, so we had to cross over under in the basement. And that was the year of a big rat infestation. So they came in and killed all the rats, but they didn't get the rat corpses out from under the set in the so we had to cross over with the smell of rotting rat.
Hmm.
And so you see a girl in a $20,000 ball gown for Jane Eyre, gather it up, go take a big breath and run under the stage to get to the other side.
Hmm.
I've lost it now, but I had a photograph of a girl sitting on the stairs in another $20,000 ball gown with a burst pipe over her head to the left, just pouring gray black water out into the backstage area. Um, Times Square is exciting to visit.
Hmm.
Try to get across Times Square for your half hour. No wonder they think New Yorkers are angry. You got your elbows out, you're going, get out of my way just to get there. Uh, on the 50th subway platform, which is also a garbage platform pickup, you
Hmm.
stand there and you hop because otherwise the rats will just run over your toes. It's it's Broadway is the illusion of glamour
Hmm.
with no glamour. And now with budgets being huge but also extremely tight,
Hmm.
there's much less. The perks you get at Stratford are insane compared to what you get on Broadway.
Talk about the Stratford perks?
A clean dressing room
Oh, okay.
that is cleaned by a cleaner who cleans. That is
Yes.
maybe freshly painted every other year. A shower that you can actually use that isn't stuffed with the last show's leftover costumes or sets.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, Space we had. Uh, oh God, for Diana, you're on the fifth floor, so you're walking up 5 floors between. There's no elevator.
Hmm.
Gotta hike your 60-year-old fat ass up those stairs.
Yeah.
Um, and when you get to the top, the room was maybe 6 feet wide by 10 feet, and there were makeup mirrors on both sides. You couldn't get into your chair unless the guy behind you was already in his chair or his chair was tucked in.
Right. Right. Right.
And if you have to get out to get dressed in the hallway because there was no room for costumes in the dressing room. And you had 15 changes.
Right.
So you'd still it's that's the difference.
Okay.
The
Well,
glamour of Broadway is an illusion. I'm on
mhm,
Broadway.
yeah.
I'm sweating my ass off in a really uncomfortable space with,
Mhm,
10 other stinky guys who I love, but
yeah.
dear God, 8 shows a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, is the culture different, or is it, maybe you already answered this, that the work you do, or the work is done in much the same way, regardless of where you are?
Um, uh, you have a good long rehearsal period for a Broadway show. You have an extensive rehearsal period at Stratford, which
Hmm.
I loved the rep system because I could
Hmm.
focus on one play for a couple of days. Then I got a break and I could focus on something else for a couple of
Right.
days.
Yeah.
That was great for my mental health and also my
Hmm.
creativity. Um, uh, Sorry, what was the question? Because it was a good one.
Well,
Uh,
so is the culture, I mean,
the culture.
is the work done, are there, I guess, different either expectations, or do you feel when you were working on Broadway, or when you're working anywhere other than Toronto or Stratford, let's say, are you aware that you are somewhere else?
Only slightly in that. Um, I would say there is more appreciation for the technical aspect of being an actor. I know that
Mhm.
may sound weird.
Mhm.
Stratford is dealing with it as they have more loud lighting instruments. They're now dealing with microphones.
Mhm.
The acoustics in that space are
Yeah.
somewhat destroyed by lighting. Um, but we don't have to wear makeup anymore, which is great.
Mhm.
Um, but in New York, there's less. Uh, there is still the commitment to the work, the integrity to the work,
Mhm.
but there's also the uh, respect for, okay, yeah, I actually have to cheat that out and play that way, or nobody's going to catch that moment,
Mhm.
or I embody my character right to the wing, and then fuck it, quick change, I'm gone. Pardon the language.
Yeah.
Get out of my way. I'm doing that. I'm now
Yeah.
back to being a person doing a thing. I got to change my clothes. I'm back in character. There's much less. I don't know. Pretension sounds a bit harsh, but there's a slightly less preciousness about the work. The
Mhm.
seriousness for the work is the same.
Mhm.
At the Shakespeare Theater Company in Washington, D.C., the respect for the text, for the work, very clear, um, very important. But also, there's a much more actors are better business people in the States.
Mhm.
They're a little more attuned to, I'm writing a letter, I'm checking into so and so. There's no pretension of, do I have the right to write to somebody? Am I allowed
Mhm.
to?
Yeah.
And that's not pretension, that's simple fear and also it's part of the game playing, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cliqueiness. Uh, I was recently talking to a friend about theater in Buffalo, and that's changed so much. But there was a while where it was just very cliquey, and you were either in the group or you weren't in the group. And
Sure.
Stratford has a bit of that as much as any theater in
Oh,
Toronto has the
sure,
thing,
sure.
you know.
I remember when my older daughter's an actor, and when she was auditioning for theater schools, she was auditioning at some schools in New York, and my wife happened to be there when for one of her auditions, and she was with a friend from Canada who was then living in New York, and they were sitting in the waiting room or the green room, and the friend said, as my daughter went in, she said, she is so clearly Canadian, and she wasn't being unpleasant about it. She said,
No,
just look at the rest of the young women in this room. She said they are New York or American. You just see how different those two cultures are.
it was very interesting. Two things. It was a bit of an advantage for me as a Canadian because I could also ride both things. I had the skill
Yes.
set to do the American approach,
Mhm.
which is an approach that happens in the hallway. Um, but at the same time had the openness to be relaxed and friendly.
Hmm.
But I remember seeing, I got a call for Michael Grandish production of Guys and Dolls that never happened in New York. Went in, sang, and when I came out, there were literally 500 young women in cocktail dresses and heels lined down the hallway, down the stairs, and out onto the street.
Hmm.
And they were all polished and professional and put together, but you could also tell there was nothing unique about them, which
Hmm.
is a harsh, horrible thing to say.
Hmm.
Flip that to when Les Mis toured to Vancouver, the Arts Club
Hmm.
was doing general auditions, so a bunch of us applied to go in and do an audition for them.
Hmm.
And we showed up and we were dressed for an audition. It was the 80s, so you dressed up to go to an audition. You dressed presentably, you know.
Hmm.
And we got there, and the local actors were like, "Oh, I guess I have to sing a song. I don't. Does anyone? Oh, do they need sheet music? Do I? People in sweats. People very
Yeah.
Vancouver. God bless it. I love the city, but I'm sure it's changed now. But it was sort of there was the period where everybody wore black to an audition because I want to be neutral and in the space, and that's
Hmm.
we all go through the pendulum swings, but
Yeah.
yeah. I hear more conversation in rehearsal breaks now of, did you go in for that? Is that happening? Have you talked to them? Have you, you know, the sad thing I hear more of in Canada than I've heard recently in the States of
Hmm.
is, oh, I don't even try with them. They won't see me.
Yeah.
There is immense cliquiness, but I also understand it as the theater dollar gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
People who have a job, who have a gig, who are on the ins are going to stay on the ins and keep doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So, I think since we've talked about the various stages in your life, I'm curious, do you have, is any part of you wondering or thinking about going back to performing? Or is that
No, it's not off the plate.
okay?
What I This is a recent shift, like in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
Uh right now, if I never go on stage again, if I never sing again,
Hmm.
I think I'd be okay.
Hmm.
Last month I was like, I need to sing. I
Right.
think I might always need to sing, but
Hmm.
uh I would like to direct. I I'm dipping my toe in a way that I is such a blessing. I don't have to do it.
Right. Right.
I'm reaching out to old friends who are now doing interesting things, going,
Hmm.
what's going on? What could we? There is a complication that I have clients and I have an ethical responsibility to my patients.
Hmm.
Um, and I can only take off 2 consecutive weeks, really, without transferring their care to somebody else.
Hmm.
Um, that can be worked into certain rehearsal periods. That could certainly
Hmm.
work directing or a small show with a short rehearsal period.
Hmm.
Um, Certainly can work for film and television or voiceover stuff is no problem at all. Doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um, and then it would be running, if it's theater, running a show and seeing my clients during the day.
Right. Right. Hmm.
My practice is primarily virtual right now because we've been moving around so much.
Hmm.
Um, but it, it's very interesting to dip my toe into it and see what would I like to do if I want to do it. I don't have to do it. It's an incredible
Yeah.
luxury.
Sure.
But I also the meaning in the work is this stuff. The meaning in the work is seeing the clients, spending time with them and their
Hmm.
experience, and
Hmm.
you know, because it's very much not about me.
Right.
And
Right.
that's wow, refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, thank
so
you.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
still on the periphery.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will, I'll keep tabs and wait to see what you post, where you will be next. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you very much. It's been tremendous of you to be so open, direct, and insightful about both the profession and your place in it.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
It's been a lovely, thoughtful time with you, as it
Oh,
always
good.
is, Joel.
Oh,
You're a
thank you.
dolly pie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to everybody who is listening, I thank you and encourage you to share this conversation with friends and colleagues, uh, with people who are interested in hearing artists speak for themselves and about themselves. And with season four, you've got in a in a you've got more than enough people to hear, and the stories are all very different. So I thank you for that support. And for those of you who have been able to support the podcast financially, that is, of course, gratefully accepted and deeply appreciated. And for those of you who would like to continue supporting it, or those of you who haven't but would like to consider it, it's very easy to do. You e-transfer Jerica Life in Stages, Jerica Life in Stages at Rogers.com. And outside of Canada, you would go to patreon.com, patreon.com/life in stages. All the instructions there are very clear. I appreciate your consideration for that. And Bruce, once again, thank you very much for joining Life in Stages.
My pleasure.